Hi, everyone. Mike Fiffik here from Fiffik Law Group. Thanks for joining us for one of our webinars. And this webinar in particular is for you small business owners out there in the community. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity, and our host today is going to be Mike McGroarty. If you've seen some of our webinars before, Mike has been a guest to talk about insurance-related matters, but also cybersecurity in particular. You know, we're here in November of 2022, and it's really a great time to be thinking about planning for 2023, setting your budgets, setting your goals for 2023. And we think that including cybersecurity in those goals and in those plans for 2023 is a really good idea. And that's why we're very excited to have Mike join us to talk to you about everything that you need to know if you would like to include those in your plans. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
All right. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me back. Excited to talk to everybody. I've done a little presentation on cyber liability and cyber before. We're going to focus a little more, like you said, on how to protect yourself from claims. I'm not an IT expert, but as I get into that, you'll understand that is an extremely important important part of it. And then we'll talk at the end a little bit about how to protect yourself from an insurance standpoint as far as cyber liability and how to shop for it. So I'm going to share my slides here. Perfect. There we go. So I'm co-owner of McGroarty Bradburn Insurance. Been in the business since 2007. My sister and I bought the agency from my father in 2020, and our grandfather actually started in 1923. So that's why we've been providing peace of mind, or 1926. Sorry, we've been providing peace of mind since 1926. So as far as cyberspace, hacking, protection of your systems, I think this is one of the best quotes, which is, in cyberspace, you have to be right 100% of the time. A hacker only has to be right once. And hackers know that, and they plan for that. And, they're sending 10 million attacks out a day, and they just need one to get through for them to make money. So how does it happen? They do it by getting in through user credentials. They use phishing tools, which is those fake links you get, those emails where you click on the link, your UPS package is stolen, or your credit card was just stolen from a credit card you don't even have. User errors, that's all part of it, clicking on the wrong link, but also just setting things up incorrectly.
So Mike, you're telling me that the emails that I've been getting from somebody overseas with a deceased relatives who wants to send me money that just need my help in setting up a new account, those are not real?
Generally not. I mean, I'd lean on the side of not real on those ones. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Malware, which is, software that's in the background of applications that you already have or programs that you already have that allow hackers to access your system through them. Misuse, which is just, your employees on the wrong websites doing the wrong things while they're at work. Unpatched systems is a huge one. Microsoft sends out multiple patches, updates a month, and you really need to be on top of those. I can't be on top of them myself, but as we'll talk later, great IT person is a secret behind that. And just web app attacks. As you can see, these are the different ways that it happens. 28% of them are hacks. 2% of software errors, privacy. Rogue employees are 13%. I mean, a cyber loss can be an employee that purposely does something. Human errors, 20%. Lost or stolen devices, 14%. We'll talk about that. 11% of those are laptops. And 13, we just don't know how that hack occurred.
Mike, I was just going to make a comment real briefly on rogue employees. You may or may not realize in a small business, if you have software, especially if you use a Microsoft suite of products, but I presume that there are similar functionality in other suites of products, you can restrict access within that software package to certain types of folders or databases. You can put restrictions on your employees' ability to access things. So, one way to mitigate the rogue employee issue would be to limit their access or put restrictions on their accounts that will not allow them to get into things that are more sensitive about your business, like your financials, your bank accounts, those types of things. But yeah, rogue employees are something that I think every employer sort of lives in fear of, right? You don't want something terrible to happen like that.
Yeah. I mean, we have an agency management system that manages our clients. And we have sorry, headset just kicked off. We have different groups within that allow access to different people. Like there's banking in there, there's employee information in there, and I have access to that, but not everybody has access to that information. So you're right, but a lot of people don't think about that. They default, give everybody access, and don't realize that they should be doing it separate for different employees. What we often do is we're trading convenience for security a lot of times. If you really didn't want to be hacked at all, you do know online banking, but I don't think that's realistic in today's world. E-commerce, our credit cards are out there. I don't know how many different websites I have credit cards attached to that I can just go in and click to purchase something. I try to actually keep a separate credit card that I use for that stuff rather than the one I carry around on my day-to-day. I never use my debit card for anything, not only because I like the points for my credit card, but if someone hacks my debit, they're hacking my bank account. And that could cut me off from the cash that I have in there, where if it's a credit card, yeah, I'm going to have to suspend that for a couple of days, but they're going to refund that money and I still can go to my bank and get cash if I need it.
Yeah, I think I've seen numbers that say that people and businesses are very similar, have on average, between 80 to 130 online accounts that have a username and password access component to them. So much of our personal lives and our business lives now are in the digital world, right? We have so many digital assets. Think about what would happen to your business or to you personally if you lost access to some of these digital accounts. They are real assets that you have to spend time planning to protect and manage. So this is just so important stuff that you're sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. You give vendors access, remote management, remote employees has added a whole nother level to the security and the hacking that has gone on since 2020. Commonly stolen information, what's commonly stolen? Personal information, credit information, medical records, intellectual property, large corporations that have trademarks, that have, private information that about their products or how they make their products. That's a major aspect of the world. It is corporate theft of their intellectual properties. A lot of them keep that stuff offline so that people can't have access to it. Customer or partner data, which is a big one for all of you. It's a big one for me. I mean, we take a lot of pride in protecting our clients' information. Network credentials, and then email addresses and passwords.
I have a client that has a popular restaurant here in Pittsburgh, and the website for one of his locations has been hacked. And so people literally cannot order online to pick up or for delivery unless they call the restaurant directly. And a lot of people just aren't going to do that. They're just going to pass right by and go order at the next place that makes it easy because your website has some kind of weird symbol whenever they try to get onto it. I mean, it can really mean big dollars and cents losses for your business if your online presence is somehow hacked or impacted and your customers can't get connected to you, or maybe they think you're closed. So,
yep. I mean, my wife, we were ordering pizza this weekend and she was ordering it and I was going to pick it up, and and she was driving. She's like, I can't order it now, I'm driving. And I said, you can actually make a phone call and order that. You don't have to use the app every time. But that's where we are nowadays. That didn't go over very well, but she was happy when I picked up the pizza.
And it's so funny. I had that same conversation with my daughter driving back from a softball tournament. I told her to place an order and she's fumbling through on the phone. I said, you can just call the place, right?
Yep. But that's where we are today. And like you said, that's big money for those restaurants that if they're shut down from that side, and it's one thing to have a temporary outage. It's another thing to have your system hacked and you don't have access to it, let alone anybody else. And then you got to go through the process of trying to unlock that. And this is a perfect example. I mean, that kind of leads right into this, which is, how much do people spend on physical security? You hear about this all the time. Security guards at stores, alarm systems, the locking, you go into Best Buy, you can't take the really expensive stuff. They give you a card for it and they have that locked up in the back. It's all protected. So they spend about 2% of their revenue on physical security as an average across all businesses. Global losses to physical theft is about $112 billion. This is from 2013, so it's a little bit outdated. It's probably way worse now. On average, on cybersecurity, businesses spend 0.4% of their revenue, but the global losses are $300 billion, almost 3 times, but they're spending less than 25% of what they're spending on physical revenue. I think that's something that we're hopefully shifting on a little bit.
Yeah, it's like the old-fashioned thief coming to check your doors once or twice a day to see if they can somehow slip in. The new thief is probably checking on your doors every 10 minutes, right? The cyber thief is constantly trying to access your business, as opposed to that thief who maybe only comes in the dark of the night to break a window or try to find some way to get into your joint.
Yeah, and what's even crazier is that the new thief can try to block it, go in every minute without doing anything. They just run a program that's just constantly trying to find that one little loop or that one little area that they can get into the system.
I think we're scaring ourselves, Mike.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, we'll talk about that. Leads us right into how we stop and how we help prevent that. And number one, 100%, no doubt about it, is a good IT company or a good IT employee. That's your first line of defense. That's what stops you more than anything else. What people don't understand, what we were just talking about, is somebody trying to do this all the time, running programs that are attacking. You also have to remember that they're looking for the weak one. That you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be better than everybody else, because they're looking for the easiest access to get into most of the time. There's certain, very large businesses that they're targeting differently. Your Facebooks, your Twitters, your Target, Amazon, they're spending a lot more time trying to find out one loophole. But for the majority of the businesses, they're just blasting out there trying to see who's the weakest. So an IT company or employee is your first line of defense. We have here, we outsource our IT to a third-party company, and they do a fantastic job. We have a firewall built that limits access to your system from outside sources. We have malware that helps prevent the bad stuff from attacking you. So it's scanning our systems and looking for apps that maybe shouldn't be on there, files that are running in the background that shouldn't be running in the background. And it's just a software that gets updated constantly. And when we talked before about finding patches, the IT guy does, our team updates our patches all the time, updates our malware constantly. Antivirus software, same thing, but especially need to have an email filtering tool. We get an email once a day of emails that weren't allowed to get through to us. We can go in and release some of those. You can also add on an email source that tells you if it's from, Mike talked about this before, but tells you if it's from an outside, if the email's from an outside source. So if somebody's spoofed Mike's email and sent it to somebody else in the team, they can see that little thing at the top that says, wait, this is from the outside. There's something fishy going on here.
Yeah, my employees every once in a while get an email from me saying, "Are you busy? Can you run to get me a couple of Amazon gift cards and scratch the numbers off of the back and send them to me?" You know, that kind of a thing. I think they've sort of caught on to that one. Nobody typically asks me if that's real anymore. They just know that it's fake.
Yeah, they're pretty good. And a lot of times those are sent out. Some of them are just sent to see if they can get something in the future. So I tell people a lot, I don't know about you, Mike, but the number of calls I've gotten for warranties for politicians, which finally has ceased, but the other spam calls or spam texts, I don't respond to any of those. You respond to it, then they know that's a good number. They know this is a good email. That's what a lot of times they're doing, and then they go deeper from there, or they sell that email or phone number to other people, which gets you onto more lists. Spam training is a huge part. Every month at our office meetings, we review some aspect of IT security, spam training. There's always one item on our agenda discussing IT security in some way, and spam training is part of that. Our Cyber Liability Insurance company that we have ours through actually provides us free spam training. And I didn't tell any of the employees this. We started last month, but because if you tell them, they're on the lookout for it. We wanted to see how they actually do in the real world without realizing it. So they're testing our employees right now. Encryption, that's what stops people from getting into your systems, computers, cell phones. Updating systems, talked about that a second ago. Backups, back up everything. You know, a lot of times I've had clients who've had ransom attacks, and it locks down their system, and their IT guy will be like, well, we got a backup from yesterday. You're going to lose 1 day's worth, or you're going to pay $5,000 to this strange person, so they can use those backups to reboot everything rather than going over. And it doesn't even matter for hacking. Backups are important because if you have a fire and your server goes down, you better hope you have that backed up here. Or computers and servers go bad. They go bad. You might lose that data if you're not backed up. So there's most companies now have an on-site backup that also links to a cloud backup off-site in multiple locations. Ours here for quick access, but only does it about once a day. Or no, it does it 2 times a day, and then it sends it off-site once a day. So it's not, it's if we need something real quick, we got it right here, but it's also off-site that we can go get access to it down the line and get everything loaded up.
We've had a couple of occasions where we've had to get the backup tapes, right? Or whenever we had a more of a robust on-site server system, we had a couple of occasions to do that. So people think maybe this is something fantastical that's never going to happen to them. Believe me, it does. And ours weren't because of hacking; they were because of power outages or a burned out server. You know, we've had a couple of occasions where that kind of a thing has happened. It just, stuff happens, right?
Yep. Yeah, we used to have to take physical tapes home once a day as our backup. This was years ago, but now at least we don't have to pull that tape out every day, put the new one in, it backs up overnight. We take that one home, so it's off-site. So there's a fire, we had it. Most of our stuff is cloud-based now, but I remember those days. Still have some in the basement. And then MFA. MFA, which is our next, is by far the most effective way to stop hacking and to protect your systems. And it's becoming, in order to buy cyber liability insurance, you need to have MFA. So what is it? It's multi-factor authentication. I think everybody has used this before. It is authentication method that requires the user to provide 2 or more verification factors to gain access to a resource. So what's that mean? Many of you have gone onto a website, you've logged in with your username and password, and then it says, we're going to text you this code, or we're going to email this code, and then you put that in. That's a form of MFA. It's extremely effective because just because somebody stole your username and password, unless they stole all of them and have access to your cell phone and have access to your email, it's much harder for them to gain access to your system. The common uses, like I mentioned, are text message, where you get a code, you enter that in. There's the email one. There's a phone call, which I don't think a lot of people use, but it's out there. And then a big one that banks and Microsoft makes us use this one. We have a program that manages all of our individual usernames and passwords. They make us use a separate one. We use Google authentication. PNC Bank is our bank. They have their own authentication that gives you a random code at the time when you're going in there. So this is by far like I said, the most effective most effective way to protect your systems. And talking to our IT professional, I said to him, hey, I think it's time that we change our passwords for our login. He goes, yeah, we can, but it's not like it used to be. We don't need to change it as much as because you guys have MFA. So if somebody tries to log into my Outlook account on another computer, they can't do it without having this app that I have on my phone and getting that code. So what is generally required to have MFA? So this is everything that you can have an MFA on, I highly suggest it. I know it's sometimes an inconvenience. I like the ones where you log in and then maybe every 60 days they ask you to do it again. But if you log into a new computer or a new phone, they'd ask you for it right away. They're not all like that. I have an insurance company that every day when we log in, we have to get that email code. And if we log out that day and log back in, got to get that code again. That can be a little frustrating. It's a little overkill, in my opinion, in my team's opinion. But it technically it's not. There is no overkill. But from a insurance standpoint, what is required? Email. You're going to pay way more, but to get a good cyber liability policy, they all require that on email. And the reason for that is that during COVID and people are home, the number one theft was people accessing email accounts and hacking or stealing information from those email accounts. So that's why everybody's requiring that. Microsoft, if you use Microsoft 365 Outlook for your email, it's a free feature that they click on. I believe Google is free to do it. So it's generally free. If you have VPN or remote access, you usually have to pay for a service to do it, but that is also required by most cyber carriers. And another important tool that you need, because you do remote into the servers on site or the computers on site. It right now is required by Microsoft and by the government that all admins that have network access need to have MFA. They are saying that that's like just to log into the computer or to log in the server. And they're saying in the next year or so that they expect the government to send out new recommendations to say every user that has access to the network should have an MFA on there. So you're going to see it growing more and more. And from it, like, we don't need it to log into our computer every day, but eventually in the next year or two, I bet my IT professional is going to say, hey, you need to add this in. Applications and websites. And I mentioned some of those earlier. So you want to protect your devices. Before, we talked about devices that had issues and needed to be protected, and how 11% were computers, 2% were phones. That's where the hack got through. So all devices, and cyber liability insurance requires this, that all devices need to be protected with at least a password. It can be a fingerprint on the phones. It can be the code that you enter in. It can be the face one, although the codes are the most secure, because, someone can't just take your thumb and push it on it or hold it up to your face. But, when we had phones like the one on the left there, the old Block or the Zach Morris phone, there was nothing really on there. And same with the Nokia. I mean, there's that snake game on that, but that was about all the personal information. Now, emails, bank accounts, everything is on your cell phone. So everybody in our team that has access to their email has to have a password on their phone. Your computers, of course, need one. tablets, same things. Point of sale systems. People don't think about this a lot, but hacking of point of sale systems, especially when you use a soft point of sale system, what that means is an application on a computer as opposed to that box that most restaurants have where you plug the card into it. But the soft ones are even more important. You need to have, I would suggest MFA on that, but at the bare minimum, you need to have a password to get access to those. And then this is a huge one, and it was tough for our team when we first started this, probably in like 2017, but institute a practice of locking devices when you walk away and have them automatically locked after a certain time frame. So our computers, after a minute, 2 minutes of inactivity, they lock. You have to re-enter your password. So we used to play a game on people. If they went to lunch and didn't lock their computer, they'd get this weird message on the Word document like, you didn't lock your computer, we caught you, something like that. And eventually people caught on to it. But that walking away from your computer, there's people in our office that aren't employees that walk through here. It's even more important when you're in a restaurant. I worked for Verizon Wireless in 2003, and you'd get written up if you walked away from your computer without locking it. So it's a practice that you need to institute, and people need practice doing it. And working from home, it's even more important. So the number one claim that we see from a cyber liability standpoint nowadays is money that is being sent incorrectly. It is the number one problem for businesses. It's 75% of cyber liability claims that we see involve the theft of the business's own money, and most of the time it's their fault. So first of all, you need to have a plan on this, and there's nothing more important than having things double checked. It's an old practice of having checks signed by two people. I mean, that's been going on for 50 years, but the new one is double verifying when you're sending money. Too many people get an email and they think it's from their boss, and in reality, it's probably not from their boss. It's from somebody that spoofed their email saying, hey, wire this money here. Wire this money to this bank. Go buy gift cards like Mike talked about earlier. No one in our office, from myself to anybody else, can send money to anybody without verifying it in another form, generally a phone call. But an email alone is not good. So you want to double verify anytime you're sending money, double verify anytime you're making a purchase, because sometimes they're sending you a link telling you to buy this, and that link is actually the hacker, and that money is not buying anything. It's just sending money to the hackers. And communication in all levels of business is the most important thing. It's what we preach all the time here at McGroarty and Bradburn. Don't dig yourself a hole in a problem. If you have a problem, come to us when you can step out of it, not when you're looking up at us from under the ground. That's what we're here. Nobody gets mad when somebody makes a mistake, but they do get mad if you don't communicate that mistake and try to get help out of it. So that's what this is more all about. I'll give you two quick examples of some sending some money situations. One is a client of ours who buys a lot of property and does do a lot of wire transfers for purchasing those properties. Always double checked it, didn't this time. Got the email from the closing company saying, hey, we switched it, send it here. He said, okay, why do we do that? And they went back and forth on emails, and he said, okay, and he sent it. Well, it's not unusual for them to switch banks, but he didn't call anybody or ask anybody. Well, somebody had actually hacked his system, discovered the closing company that he was working with, spoofed their email, and then was communicating with him back and forth like he was communicating with them. That was over $1 million. Luckily, he caught it the same day, later that day, that he made that mistake, because he said, hey, isn't it closing tomorrow? And on a phone call with the person, they go, no, it's a week later. And that's when he discovered it. So luckily, banks still hold on to some of that. It ended up being about $88,000 that was actually stolen. So that's a crazy amount of money to me to send without talking to somebody on the phone. But I would say even $5 is too much to send without talking to somebody on the phone. And then another one that I think is a good example of your average business, because the average business isn't sending and wiring a ton of money. But we have a client who runs a small business and always sends their landlord a check every quarter for rent. So it doesn't do it monthly. They do it quarterly, and got an email from the landlord. We will not be accepting checks anymore. You need to wire money. If you send us a check, we will not deposit it. You will be in default. So you need to wire it from now on, and gave him this. So she sent about $17,000 for that quarter's worth of rent. And the landlord never sent her any of that information. So that seems like a simple thing, but when stuff, that's a highlight. When stuff changes, you need to talk to somebody, because that's an unusual thing for her to always pay rent by check and not. But that's somebody that doesn't even really use computers. She has a Google email address. She doesn't have her own server. She doesn't have her own domain. She has a website, but somebody else hosts it. So you can see how this can affect everybody. Too many people say, well, I don't have servers, or I don't have personal information. Everybody has personal information of others or their employees, and everybody has a risk for cyber liability claim. So risk mitigations. Insurance is, we talked about some of the other forms of stopping it before it starts. The backup plan is insurance. A cyber liability policy is there to help you out when those mistakes happen. When that hacker comes up with something new that nobody's heard of yet that gets through your system. So the policy must meet the needs of the business. It needs to pay for a lot of different things, and there's a lot of different angles to this. I'm going to go over a quick proposal that we have. But the more information, the better when calculating the needs. So making sure your insurance professional understands what you do and the exposures you have is extremely important, because unlike auto insurance or workers' comp or property insurance that's been around for 100 years, cyber liability insurance is not. It's still an evolving process. Not all policies are the same. They're starting to come out with some standardized languages that most of the companies are using, but there's still different exclusions, different things that need to be covered, and I'll show you that. Watch for exclusions, because the double authentication is an exclusion on a lot of policies, meaning if you send money without authenticating it in another form via text or phone, there might not be coverage for that. So I'm going to slide my other one over here. So the newest program that we have is a smart broker came out and said, hey, we need a way to shop multiple cyber carriers at the exact same time.
Hey, Mike, can you make that just a little bit bigger on your computer? Because it's a little difficult to see.
Is that good?
That's better. That's
All
better.
right.
Yep.
So it's actually a very, very smart plan. Most of these newer companies, most of the cyber companies are pretty smart as far as cyber goes. So they're able to give them access to their APIs, what it's called. It's behind the scenes software that does the quoting for them. And this broker said, hey, let's get a bunch of these. Let's get some basic information on the person, and then we can get them some quotes. So this was actually another agency that does health insurance that we work with. All we needed was their name, their revenue. We didn't need their record account. They just estimate what their record count is. So it gave us, these were the top 5 quotes that they got. You can see these different carriers. And then big lines to pay attention to. Admitted versus non-admitted. Non-admitted means that they are not part of the guaranteed fund in Pennsylvania, which means if they go bankrupt, PA doesn't guarantee the claims at that time, where an admitted carrier is guaranteed. So if you're in the middle of a claim and that company goes bankrupt, you will, the PA will pick up that claim automatically. Every state that I know of that I've ever seen, and there's been a lot of them, have admitted or non-admitted. It also means that they have to file all of their forms with the state of Pennsylvania, and they need to be approved. Non-admitted carriers do not have to file their forms with PA. So, and I don't suggest, unless you don't have a choice, going with a non-admitted carrier. And sometimes that's the case if you had some past claims or some situations you can't resolve, but admitted is the way to go. The rating, it tells you the rating, the size of the company, A minus, A plus is the best, A plus is the best, but I'm comfortable with A and above personally. Even A minus is okay most of the time, but A and above is the best. That's rated by an independent carrier company. It tells you the financial security of that company. Prior acts means some of these have what's called a retroactive date, which means they won't cover any claims that happened prior to you writing the policy, even if you don't know about them. But full prior acts is it allows you, if something comes up that happened 3 years ago, you have some coverage for that. There's a limit, a deductible, and then the premium. And some of them have some taxes and fees that go along with it. So the main portions of this, third-party liability, that is a client or any third-party customer, somebody that does work on your behalf, subcontractors, a vendor that you use, they're all third-party. So there's cyber liability, media liability. Those are protecting you if you're sued because their personal information or business information is exposed from your system. There's PCI fines and assessment. That's from the government in the event of a claim. This one actually throws in some management liability, which is a different coverage from cyber. But like I said, people are mixing some of these together and making kind of bigger policies than just cyber. It includes contractual liability, which is all of them do, which is very important. If you're contractually obligated to protect somebody's information, then they're still going to cover that. These ones throw in some bodily injury, property damage, which is more of a general liability claim. I don't suggest. It's kind of on the side. It's not as important. First party, that's protecting you and it's protecting your employees. So something that people don't think about a lot of time happened to one of my clients. They got hacked. All the employees knew that. It actually locked down their server and destroyed it. And that was $15,000 to replace that server. And all of the employees knew that they were hacked because all of their computers were locked down. They also know that all of their personal information is now stolen. Their social security numbers, their medical information, because they had medical plans for them. Most people have birth certificate. If you remember, when you hire somebody, you usually need a driver's license and either a birth certificate or social security card as part of the I-9. All that stuff most people have online now. So first party is protecting you and your employees. It protects you. Most of them will pay some ransomware we talked about. The insurance company will pay. Big part of these policies is when the hack happens, they take over. The insurance company handles it. They work on getting your money back. They work on cleaning up the systems. They work on contacting your clients. They work on the cyber or the credit monitoring that is required most of the time. So every state has different rules for what you have to do in a hack. They also have different rules based on the number of people that were exposed in that hack. And they work with each state to make sure it's done. So if you have clients in multiple states, you have different requirements for each one of them. The average cost is $176 per customer's information, per customer when their information is stolen. So that's what the average cost is to take care of them after a hack. But on the first party side, we have all these other coverages. What I love about this, I'm going to scroll down for a second, is that this proposal is great for me and it's great for the customer because not only does it show you what the limits are, but it gives you an explanation of what every one of these are. Because I'm not going to lie to you, I don't remember what every one of these are every time. I don't think the people that work for the cyber carriers all of the time can do all of them right away. But this easy access is great. So you go back up here And we go back to, let's just look at a couple of these and we'll go down. Social engineering, cyber crime, client funds, telephone hacking, cyberjacking, reputation harm. So when you go back, reputation harm, coverage for lost income from an adverse media event due to a cyber event that damages the insurer's reputation. I mean, how many people stopped going to Target after they were hacked? Probably not a lot, but some people did. And they definitely looked bad. Their stock pricing went down. Cryptojacking's a new one that's in there. That's when it's more for people that are processing and mining cryptocurrency. But telephone hacking, unauthorized or fraudulent telephone calls, so that could come from your number. Somebody steals your number and is making calls to people. Invoice manipulation is a huge one. We hear about those all the time, where you don't know this, but a hacker is invoicing your clients, and then you call them and be like, hey, you haven't paid in 3 months. And then they say, well, yeah, we have. And then you realize that you were hacked and that somebody was invoicing your customers. I haven't had that, but I've had 2 friends in the industry that have had that happened to their clients. And the interesting thing behind that, why this is an extra coverage is added in, is because this isn't always available on all of them. If you see, it's only actually on these 2, and there's small sublimits on them. And the reason behind that is it's, one, a lot of times out of your control and you don't know what's happening. But the average cyber policy won't pay for that because your money wasn't stolen. Technically, your client's money was stolen, not yours. So cybercrime, coverage for theft of funds from a failure in your security, often by a hacker stealing login credentials. So that's your money and funds being stolen. Bricking, that's what I talked about before. That's where your IT hardware is useless. That server is no good anymore. And what was the last one I want to talk about here? I think the main one is this cybercrime, where they're stealing your money and funds transferred. Sorry, I don't see it on here right now, but funds transfer fraud, and that's when we talked about a lot before, when people are stealing your money by it's right here. Social engineering, coverage for theft of funds by using deception or impersonation, where a criminal tricks you into parting with your funds. So that's when we're talking about cyber, is where they actually hack your system and steal it. So see how complicated this is. It's not as simple buy policy and you're all covered. You actually have to pay attention to these little things. So that's why I love this. Number one, it gives me all that. Number two, it gives me a bunch of different options. So somebody might say, I'm not worried about, client funds. So they might go with this policy, but it gives us all the different options and allows us to show clients what's available out there and let them know what's important. So, and the last part is just exercises, training. Like I said, most of these IT companies will provide you with some training. They'll actually do some spam for you. The last one I just sold last week, they actually helped them institute a cyber program, security program for them as part of writing the policy. And then they were requiring them to do that spam training. So that's starting to become a big part, is that these insurance companies realize we'll provide these services to our clients for free because it'll help us prevent claims in the future. Walk through responsibilities. I think that's an important one. We talked about, not giving people access to everything. It's also important to understand that, like, this person is the only one that has, these 3 people are the only ones that have access to the bank account. I don't ever suggest having one person have access to anything. You want backups on and people checking on everything. I had an insurance agent on a group chat that I'm on, a Facebook group, who said that since 2019, he took a down payment for a client and swept it through his agency's bank account, and has been paying that person's insurance since 2019 because nobody was checking their bank account to see that they were paying it every month. And people were joking with him, like, that's going to be an interesting conversation with that client when he realizes that insurance isn't free anymore. But that's why backups are important. He should have had a third-party accountant checking all that stuff. The comments were not super nice to him in that one. But that's why you should walk through responsibilities, but have people checking on everything. Allow enough time to, you need to take some time to train some people on this. Like I said, every office meeting once a month, we take the time to talk about a different cyber related topic, protecting ourselves. We always talk about the clients, but ourselves. Debrief if something happens. You need to know what to do and to take a minute, step back and realize what to do. What's great is when you have a cyber company, call them right away, and they have teams of people that jump in and run with it. And then repeat, annually for the spam training, because they change all the time, the type of spams, but there's a lot of different trainings that you should be doing at least annually. A lot of our cyber meeting trainings do repeat from year to year, but that's because there's 8 million things going on in our office. So you always got to remind people.
Or maybe you have new personnel coming on board, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Well, it's just like, even learning stuff. We also train on, proper email etiquette, right? It seems very simple, but it might seem simple to you, but it's not, or simple or obvious, but it might not be to other people. So that, hey, here's a cool little tool. Like we use a thing called Snippet on the computer, which is on every Windows device, and it allows you to cut a little screenshot out, copy and paste it in an email. And most people don't know about that. And it's a tool that saved our team countless hours of trying to retype stuff when you can just take a little screenshot and put it in when there's these like requirements that need to be done prior to issuing the policy. So all those little things can make your team much more efficient, which makes the business a lot more profitable. And having a good cyber program does that as well. So that wraps things up. Again, my information is there. You can reach out to Mike or the team anytime. I'm happy to get an easy quote through that system and walk people through it. It's not always a click and issue situation, because it does, if people have claims, you can still get coverage, but it changes a little bit. And there's still some questions that need to be verified that they make assumptions on, but it's great to get an easy idea of what it would cost you to be insured and to make sure you're covering all those little extra coverages that are tossed in there.
So Mike, it looks like from that tool that you had, or that quote, you definitely recommend getting multiple quotes from different carriers, I guess, right?
100%. Yeah. Just because, like I said, it's not the wild west like it used to be 6 or 7 years ago. Those admitted carriers have made a huge difference because they are filing, but none of them are the same. Quite frankly, other than workers' comp and auto, there's different coverages in all the policies. And that's why I also said you need to talk to an insurance professional about it. Like getting a quote online is great, but doesn't really cover everything that you need. And there's areas outside of cyber that need to be covered that help protect that. Like, the big one, even related to cyber, is your computers. If a electric surge comes in and fries your computers, you actually need a special coverage called EDP, electronic data processing equipment, in order to cover those that you don't get on cyber, you get on your business owners or your package policies. So they all go hand in hand. They're just pieces that you need to add in to make sure you're properly protected. But yeah, multiple carriers, and then review those additional coverages that are available. That's why I love that one. It gives you a chart and lays it all out. So instead of having to take one policy and read through it and pick out all those different coverages, this gives you the chart that breaks them all down for you in one place.
I'm guessing that as a business owner, you should expect to answer some kind of questionnaire or questions about your business so that, you could fit them with the right policy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's questions that go into the application. Like they make a lot of assumptions on those applications or on that comparison chart. So they're just trying to get in there, get some numbers, and show you the different coverages that are available. But then they make some assumptions like about the MFA, where you actually have to go in and answer some specific questions. And a lot of people are scared of those, or like, if I say no, am I not going to be eligible for it? That's not always the case. There's certain things that are required, but aren't. But then there's a thorough questionnaire that we do for our clients about their needs, what their business is, how they operate, are they remote, are they all in office, do they have a credit card machine? I mean, that's a big one. And it's something we didn't really talk about, but offsetting some of your exposure through the software and the companies you use is big. When we sign up for our agency management system, we check their cyber liability policy, and they laid out all of their security that it goes in. So if we are hacked, a big part of that exposure is going on to them. And then we have our policy that takes care of it immediately. And then we'll even go after them after the fact to refund some of the funds, get back some of the funds that our policy paid out, get back our deductible, things like that. So looking at those credit card machines, everybody thinks they're fine, they're guaranteed, it's on them. They're not always going to defend you in those cases. They might pay out the claim, but that doesn't mean they're going to defend you if you're sued in those situations. So paying attention to those, but also having your own policy is extremely important.
All right. Well, this was great, Mike. I always love hearing you talk about cyber security, because I do think it's a big issue for businesses. They really, really have to start paying attention to it. And if they don't, I think the incidence of hacking and spoofing and phishing and all of those types of things are just going to continue to increase. They're in our email, now they're on our texts and on our phones, and it's just going to get worse as our world switches into the digital world more and more. So it's useful information. I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always great working with a professional like yourself and understanding there's a lot of little, business owners are very important, and there's a lot of they're very busy. There's a lot of little things that it's hard to pay attention to, and finding the right person. Like I said, you don't go cheap on the insurance, in my opinion. Don't, a lawyer, have them look at stuff. It's easier to fix stuff ahead of time than it is to fix stuff after the fact. So cyber liability and protecting is being proactive, and it's much easier to hire a professional to do that stuff than to try to figure it out yourself a lot of times. So
all right.
Well, thanks
again.
Thanks.
And Mike's information was up there. So if you have any questions, I'm sure we'd be happy to hear from you to talk with you about anything you need regarding cyber insurance and cyber issues. So
absolutely.
Thanks again, Mike. Take care.
Mike.
Have a good one.
You too. Thanks.